My name is Rachel Carter. I'm 31, and on my own birthday, my mother-in-law, Linda, handed me divorce papers inside a pink envelope covered with silver butterflies. She stood in the middle of my workplace, Daniel's restaurant, raising her voice so every diner could hear. From all of us, Rachel. Happy birthday. Across the booth, my husband Ethan lifted his phone, recording every flicker of my expression like this was a family game night instead of the end of my marriage. His sister Sarah leaned in with her camera, too smirking, as though my humiliation was the entertainment they'd all been waiting for. The envelope looked so innocent, like something a child would give their mother after school, but inside the legal language screamed cold and final petition for dissolution of marriage. It should have shattered me. It should have left me begging, crying, broken. That was the scene they wanted. Instead, I picked up the pen, signed my name without trembling, and slid the papers back across the table. My voice was steady when I said, "Thank you, Linda. This is the most generous gift you've ever given me." Because what they didn't know was that in my own purse, folded neat and ready, I carried a letter that would turn their cruelest surprise into my greatest escape. 3 days before that dinner, I had already caught Linda hunched over our kitchen table, sliding official papers into that pink envelope with a smile I'd never seen before. She thought she was clever. She thought her timing was perfect. What none of them realized was that I had my own envelope tucked inside my purse, holding a job offer that would change everything about my future. So when I signed those divorce papers, it wasn't defeat. It was freedom. Tell me, if your family tried to humiliate you in public, would you fight back on the spot, or would you stay silent until the right moment to strike? Before I continue, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family. The first time I walked into the Carter's house as Ethan's wife, the hallway smelled like lemon cleaner and expectations. Family photos lined the staircase, Sarah in a white homecoming dress, Ethan shaking hands with a partner at an accounting banquet, Linda at a charity luncheon in a hat that looked like it came with an admission fee. When she hugged me, it was the kind of embrace that keeps the pelvises far apart and the judgment close. "Everyone, this is Ethan's wife," Linda announced to the living room as if I were a new appliance. She didn't use my name. "She works in the service industry." The words hung in the air like steam over pasta water, familiar to her, a little scalding to me. Someone murmured, "How interesting the way people talk about a hobby that involves taxidermy." I smiled and asked who wanted more iced tea. Daniel's, the restaurant where I worked, became my sanctuary. The ticket printer chirped like a restless cricket. Pans hissed when Angela, our head cook, hit them with a shine of oil. Mr. Daniels moved through the dining room with a towel over his shoulder, patting regulars on the back, telling bad jokes that somehow made people tip more. I learned the weight of a tray on my fingertips, the geometry of a crowded Friday night, the rhythm of when to interrupt a business deal and when to leave a third cup of coffee without being seen. It was honest work. It felt like competence. At home, that word never stuck to me. At Ethan's cousin's graduation party, Linda pressed me toward a circle of relatives I didn't know. The backyard was strung with white lights, the grill smoking like a small fog had fallen just over the steaks. "This is Rachel," she said brightly. "She's figuring out her path right now." It was a softer way of saying lost. Aunt Kathleen smiled with all her teeth. "What kind of service?" she asked, already bored. "Restaurants," I said. "Daniel's on Maple." "Oh," she nodded, and I watched the conversation slide off me and cling to Ethan's promotion. I excused myself and passed a hallway mirror where my own eyes looked like they were apologizing. I didn't know it then, but that mirror would start keeping score. At Thanksgiving, Linda set the table like a catalog rigid napkin rings butter shaped like oak leaves. We went around and shared what we were thankful for. To Sarah's engagement to Dr. Patel, Linda beamed, and to Ethan's growing client list. She lifted her glass. So proud. When it was my turn, she busy-handed the gravy boat and said, "Next," then realized and gestured back, "Your turn," like someone tossing a dog a treat. "Family and health." I said, my mouth dry from a turkey that had been roasted into submission. Sarah's fiancé squeezed her knee. I didn't know it then, but the way that moment shrank me would grow something else I wasn't ready to name. Christmas came in tissue paper and quiet. Linda gave Sarah a silk scarf the color of champagne. She handed me a book wrapped in supermarket ads, Professional Success for Women. "I thought you'd enjoy this," she said as if she were passing along the manual that came with me. I laughed because the alternative would have cracked my teeth. Later in the guest bathroom, I turned the faucet to drown out my breathing. The house smelled like cinnamon pine cones and floor polish. I pressed my fingers into the cool edge of the marble sink and told myself not to cry. I didn't know it then, but my silence was teaching all of us the wrong lesson. The family group chat became a daily performance. Sarah posted inspirational quotes about women who build empires with a winky face. Goals she wrote beneath photos of corner offices and latte art. When I typed "love this," she replied, "Where are you applying these days?" Any movement as if my ambition were a package she could track. Ethan read threads and said, "They mean well." I started answering less. I started buying more. Blazers that itched my wrists. Shoes that promised interviews would feel different if I walked in with the right leather. The credit card bill learned my name faster than Linda ever would. At Ethan's birthday dinner in February, Linda booked a downtown spot with glass walls and waiters who whispered. The table hummed with talk about IPOs and tax strategy. When a partner's wife asked what I did, Ethan cut in Rachel's exploring her options. Exploring made me sound like I was on a scenic drive, the kind where people pull over to take pictures of canyons. I tasted copper under my tongue and asked the server for water I didn't drink. On the way home, Ethan said Mom's old-fashioned. "Don't take it personally." But it wasn't the vintage of her manners that hurt. It was the accuracy with which she poured. Easter draped itself in pastels and thin patience. Linda's friend, Mrs. Green from the country club, sat across from me, pearls resting like punctuation at her throat. "And what's your background, dear?" she asked, pronouncing dear as though it rhymed with problem. I opened my mouth, but Linda slid in. "She's between steps. Thinking about school. Between steps, as if I were a miscount in the family waltz." I carried plates to the sink and listened to the house hum the dishwasher, the TV, and the den, little machines that knew their role and executed without complaint. I didn't know it then, but the hum had started sounding like a dare. I went home and rearranged my closet. I tried on competence in front of the mirror, the navy dress, the white blouse, the blazer with shoulder seams that didn't sit where my shoulders were. Every outfit was a question I couldn't answer. The cracked photo frame on our dresser, an accident from the move we never fixed, looked like the border of my life pretty, but splintered. I swallowed the shame because it seemed to be the only thing the Carters served without running out. When Linda called, her voice came in two settings, syrup and steel. "How's the search?" she would ask in syrup. "Ethan deserves a partner who can represent him well," she would add in steel. I nodded into the phone like she could see it. After we hung up, I would stand in the kitchen and stare at the pink, sticky note holding our grocery list to the fridge. The color matched a birthday envelope I hadn't met yet. I didn't know it then, but the world was already assembling my scene. Sundays at Daniel's were the antidote. Families came after church kids in scuffed dress shoes, swinging their legs under the table. Angela slid me a plate at the pass when she could eat. She'd say not asking how things were because she could read the answer in the slope of my shoulders. "Mr. Daniels told me you've got a manager's brain," and I tucked that sentence into my apron pocket like a lucky coin. Customers remembered my name, not just my job. The tip jar said thank you and meant it. For 7 hours at a time, I was exactly what I appeared to be. Then, 1 week after Easter, I was clearing plates at Linda's, and I heard her praying in the den. "Lord," she whispered, "help Ethan come to his senses." The TV was low, the lamp was warm, and my name didn't enter the room. Just the idea of me as a problem in a conversation between Linda and God. I stood in the hallway holding a stack of plates that suddenly felt like cinder blocks. Somewhere a timer dinged for dessert. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't know it then, but that prayer was a match. I was the paper it would set on fire and the light I would end up seeing by. I started with a blank document and named it Rachel Carter Resume because naming something feels like the first step toward believing it. I listed Daniels and every position that sounded like responsibility, closing duties, training new hires, inventory counts. I dressed the verbs up in suits, coordinated, managed, optimized. The words looked confident. My stomach didn't. I uploaded to job boards until my laptop fan sounded like a small airplane. Cover letters became a second shift. "Dear hiring manager, my experience in hospitality has taught me I learned how to make arranging silverware sound like orchestration and how to turn a full section on a Friday into multi-stakeholder service environments. The first interview was at a glass building that reflected a better version of the sky. The lobby smelled like eucalyptus and power. A receptionist with perfect bangs handed me a clipboard. "Have you worked with CRM platforms?" she asked, like that's something everyone keeps in the pantry. Upstairs, a woman in a sharp gray dress skimmed my resume. "Your background is non-traditional." She said the way a doctor says benign, but watch it. I told her about de-escalating angry tables and mapping kitchen delays in my head. She checked her watch. "We're looking for corporate exposure," she said, like exposure were a vitamin I had neglected. I walked out feeling like a word misspelled by a single letter. I didn't know it then, but every no was a set piece moving into place. The rejections came in a rainbow of fonts. "We've decided to move forward with other candidates. We were impressed with your passion, but we'll keep your resume on file, which is corporate, for we won't." I started printing the emails because paper made the losses look like something you could stack and survive. I wrapped a rubber band around the growing pile. Owning the weight felt better than letting it float. Community college night classes seemed like a bridge I could build while walking it. I enrolled in Intro to Business and to Professional Communication. The classroom smelled like dry erase marker and effort. Professor Whitaker wore corduroy and belief. When I talked about how servers triage a 6-table section, he said, "That's workflow." When I explained why I read the room before offering dessert, he said, "That's customer segmentation." For 3 hours a week, I spoke a language that translated me. On the drive home, the streetlights broke the dark into manageable pieces. At home, tuition receipts and textbook costs turned into quiet arguments. "Maybe slow down," Ethan said, looking at our bank app, his thumb dragging across our dwindling balance like he could rub the numbers higher. Maybe wait. Wait felt like a word that only grows in someone else's mouth. I picked up doubles when I could, stood longer, smiled wider. My feet burned by 9 and went numb by 10. Angela started leaving me an extra empanada wrapped in foil. For the walk to your car, she said, meaning for the part of the day when your strength unbuttons itself. Mrs. Green came into Daniel's with friends from the club and looked surprised to see me in motion. "You're still here?" she said, as if I were a painting the restaurant had chosen not to rotate. "We love this place," I said, pouring water, the ice clinking like chaperoned conversation. "Rachel's running the show tonight," Mr. Daniels chimed as he passed, and I tucked that sentence beside the other one in my apron. 2 coins now, my own currency. One Tuesday, I sat in our dark kitchen at 1 a.m., surrounded by index cards, salary requirements, transferable skills, questions to ask. The fridge hummed a sound that had become a lullaby and a threat. I wrote, "I am not a burden" on a card and slid it under the salt shaker so I would see it when I made eggs in the morning. I didn't know it then, but I was practicing a new kind of prayer, one that addressed the part of me Linda kept trying to starve. I interviewed at a bank where the manager said, "We need thick skin. Customers can be demanding," and I wanted to laugh into my blazer. I interviewed at a marketing firm where a 24-year-old asked, "Can you think strategically the way someone asks if you can chew?" I failed a spreadsheet test that required shortcuts my fingers hadn't met yet. I went home and watched tutorials until the cells in Excel felt less like a constellation and more like a map. Every time I learned one new thing, the mountain grew a foot taller. Every time I slept, I dreamed I was back at the Carter's table passing plates of invisible food that never filled me. The group chat found new ways to phrase old doubts. "Have you tried shadowing someone Sarah sent? Mentorship could be great for you." Linda added a thumbs-up emoji, the kind of endorsement that feels like a push. Ethan tried to split himself between us. "Mom has opinions," he said. "She wants what's best." But what she wanted was a version of me who would make her dinner parties easier. I learned to set my phone face down and study in public libraries where the quiet had rules and no one asked who I planned to become while pretending to hand me a napkin. My body started keeping a record. My shoulders rose toward my ears when I heard Linda's ringtone. My jaw clicked when Ethan cleared his throat to speak for me in rooms where I didn't need an interpreter. I started losing weight not in the cute way magazines promise, but in the way stress carves you smaller from the inside. Angela said, "Eat more often," and sometimes I did. Then came the night Mr. Daniels pulled me aside. "You're different lately," he said, not unkind, just true. The dining room was humming the string lights over the windows reflected in the sugar caddies like tiny galaxies. "You carry the room," he said, "even when you think you don't." I nodded and felt something in my chest sit down instead of pacing. We closed late and I walked to my car under a sky the color of dishwater. My phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Mom says Sarah's friend might know someone hiring at a clinic." I stared at the message until the letters blurred and I typed, "Thanks." The word looked too small for the life it was standing in. Professor Whitaker assigned a presentation on networking. "Interview someone in the field you want," he said. I emailed 5 people I didn't know and heard back from none. I wore my navy dress and practiced handshakes with my reflection. My reflection looked brave until it looked tired. I told the class how servers build relationships in 5-minute increments, that trust is a refill and a memory. No onions, extra lemon always asks for the check with dessert. The room nodded, and for a second I watched the map and knew where I was. Rejections kept coming, but something else arrived too. A steadier voice in my head that didn't belong to Linda. It sounded like Angela when she told me my hands didn't shake on a full tray. It sounded like Mr. Daniels when he said manager's brain. It sounded a little like me before I started speaking in apologies. One Monday afternoon, I sat at our kitchen table with laundry folded into small cooperative squares. The light through the blinds cut the room into neat stripes. My inbox held 47 polite no's. The rubber band around the printouts had begun to fray. I slid the stack into a drawer because I didn't want to count anymore. I wanted to breathe. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that has a pulse. I could hear the faint click of the thermostat. Somewhere, a neighbor's dog barked twice and gave up. I held Ethan's crisp white shirt and imagined a life where I wasn't smoothing other people's creases just to be invited to sit down. My phone lit up with an unknown number. I almost let it ring out because I assumed it was a reminder that my car's extended warranty had expired again. My thumb hovered. I didn't know it then, but the space between the second and third ring was the thin seam where my old life would split open and a new one would begin to breathe. When the call came from Nicole Harper, Human Resources at the Grand Plaza Hotel, her voice sounded like sunlight poured into my dark kitchen. "Your restaurant experience is exactly what caught our attention," she said, and I wrote those words down on the back of a grocery receipt because I couldn't believe they belonged to me. For months, every email had said not enough, not qualified, not suitable. And now someone was telling me that the very thing Linda ridiculed my shifts at Daniels was the reason I was being considered. I wanted to run through the house screaming, but Ethan was upstairs on a conference call. Instead, I pressed the phone between my ear and shoulder and scribbled notes with a pen that shook like it had stage fright. Nicole explained the details: salary starting at $45,000, benefits training, even housing in a staff apartment. I repeated the words back to her, needing to hear them twice so they wouldn't vanish. "We'd like to schedule a phone interview later this week," she said. My voice didn't crack when I answered, "Yes." But when the call ended, I pressed my forehead to the table and let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. 3 days later, I was pacing in our bedroom with the door locked while Ethan worked in the den. The phone interview felt like stepping into air and finding a bridge beneath my feet. Nicole asked about handling difficult customers, juggling priorities, keeping calm when pressure cooked the room. For once, my answers weren't translations, they were the language itself. She laughed at one of my stories about a birthday party gone wrong at Daniels and said, "That's exactly the instinct we need." An hour later, the offer arrived by email. The letterhead gleamed. My name looked different on paper that promised health insurance and retirement planning. I printed a copy and folded it neatly into an envelope I slipped into my purse. It felt like armor. Meanwhile, Linda's behavior began shifting in a way that made the hairs rise on the back of my neck. For 2 years, she had treated me like a stain she couldn't scrub out of the carpet. Suddenly, she was polite, even affectionate. She called me dear in a voice sugared with false kindness. She invited me to coffee, just us girls. She asked about my class schedule and actually listened. Sarah mirrored her mother smiling when our eyes met instead of rolling them. She even volunteered to help with my birthday celebration. It was like the whole family had been assigned new roles in a play, and I was the only one who didn't get a script. Then I saw it. It was early morning. I came down for coffee before my shift at Daniels. The house was quiet except for the scratch of a pen. At the kitchen table, Linda sat with papers spread in a perfect grid. She wore her reading glasses halfway down her nose, the red pen in her hand moving quickly. When she noticed me, she froze, but not like someone caught off guard. More like someone satisfied the trap had sprung. With surprising speed, she stacked the pages, slid them into a pale pink envelope with silver butterflies, and pressed her palm over it. "Just some family paperwork," she said, her voice as sweet as artificial sweetener. "Nothing to concern you." She even called me dear again, and the word sat wrong on my skin. I recognized the weight of legal documents. I'd seen eviction notices at Daniel's tucked inside unpaid bills, but I forced a smile, poured my coffee, and asked if she needed help. She patted the envelope. "Oh no, this is something special, something for your birthday." The envelope looked too festive, too careful. Linda wasn't a woman who lingered over Hallmark aisles. She didn't choose butterflies unless they were meant to disguise barbed wire. I didn't mention it to Ethan. What would I say? "I think your mom's wrapping something sharp in pink paper." Instead, I tucked the suspicion into the back of my mind and carried on. The week before my birthday, little clues piled up like crumbs leading toward something rotten. Ethan kept grinning at his phone, angling the screen away when I leaned close. "Just surprise stuff," he said. "You'll love it." His excitement felt boyish, but when he kissed me at night, there was a tenderness that bordered on guilt. Sarah, who usually found excuses to avoid family dinners, texted me directly. "Can't wait for your big night, complete with heart emojis." The friendliness rang hollow like a smile pasted onto a mask. Even Linda shocked me by suggesting we hold the birthday dinner at Daniel's. For 2 years, she'd avoided stepping into my workplace, dismissing it as a nice little cafe. Now, she wanted to bring the family there, where I was known and respected, my chest filled with confused hope. Maybe she was softening. Maybe she wanted to honor the place I had fought to survive in. But every time I replayed that morning at the kitchen table, her quick hands, her predatory satisfaction, the envelope glowing with its cruel secret, my stomach clenched. I carried my own envelope everywhere, tucked safely in my purse. Sometimes on my break at Daniel's, I'd slide into a booth, unfold the offer letter, and trace the words with my finger like Braille Guest Services Coordinator. Full benefits. Housing provided. Angela caught me once the paper spread out beside my cup of coffee. "That looks official," she said, raising her eyebrows. I nodded, throat tight. "It's a job. A real one. At the Grand Plaza Hotel." Her grin was wide and immediate. "Rachel, that's incredible," she whispered like sharing a secret blessing. "Don't tell anyone until the right time. Let them choke on it." She was right. Every instinct screamed that timing mattered. If Linda planned to humiliate me on my birthday, then my counterstrike had to be delivered in the same moment. Otherwise, the story would be hers. The days leading up to my birthday dragged like heavy curtains. Ethan's affection grew cloying. Sarah's smiles sharpened. Linda called twice just to confirm the dinner arrangements. "Wear something nice but not too formal," she said. "You'll want to be comfortable for what we have planned." Her tone was a polished knife. I went to Sandra's salon and let her style my hair into soft waves. "Something's different about you," she said, pinning the last curl. "You look lighter." I smiled at my reflection. Maybe tonight changes everything. At home, I tried on outfits until the navy dress whispered professional but approachable. I practiced in the mirror. I have some exciting news to share. 3 days ago, I received a job offer from the Grand Plaza Hotel. My pulse raced just saying it. In the jewelry box, I placed the folded letter like a jewel. In my purse, it became a weapon. The morning of my birthday, I woke with Ethan's arm around me. "This will be a day you'll never forget," he whispered. His breath smelled of coffee and secrets. Downstairs, Linda waited with her designer purse already slung over her shoulder. I watched her fingers brush against the pink envelope hidden inside her smile too sharp. She thought tonight would end me. But I carried my own envelope, and inside it the proof that I was more than the caricature she'd drawn. The clues had all been laid: Linda's false sweetness, her pink butterflies. Ethan's secretive texts, his nervous smiles. Sarah's sudden interest, her phone ready. They believed they were scripting my collapse. But I had gathered my own evidence. Every rejection turned into resilience, every sneer into fuel, every humiliation into preparation. And now, the one piece of paper that could rewrite their story rested against my heart. I didn't know exactly how the night would play out, but I knew this when Linda finally slid her cruel envelope across the table, I'd be ready to slide mine right back, and the look on her face would be worth every sleepless night. I spent the night before my birthday wide awake, lying on the edge of our bed, while Ethan slept soundly beside me. His breathing was steady, but I could feel the tension radiating from him even in sleep. The man who once fought to marry me now seemed like a conspirator waiting for curtain call. Every glance he shared with Linda lately felt rehearsed. Every smile carried a secret I wasn't meant to share. But I had my own secret, my envelope, my weapon. I slipped quietly into the bathroom and locked the door, the mirror catching the shadows under my eyes. From the drawer, I pulled out the folded letter from the Grand Plaza Hotel. I smoothed the creases against the counter, the hotel's elegant letterhead shining under the fluorescent light. Guest Services Coordinator. It looked like freedom dressed as opportunity. I whispered the words I'd rehearsed 100 times. I have some exciting news to share. 3 days ago, I received a job offer. Full benefits housing a new city. Each phrase was a bullet I would fire back at Linda's ambush. My pulse steadied as I spoke them like my body already knew this battle belonged to me. The next day, I prepared like a soldier polishing armor. I ironed the navy dress until every seam lay flat, choosing it for its balance, formal enough to command respect, simple enough not to look like I was performing. I polished my shoes, cleaned my purse, and tucked the envelope into the inner pocket, making sure the flap peeked out just enough that I could retrieve it gracefully when the moment came. At Sandra's salon, the hum of dryers and the scent of hairspray surrounded me like a cocoon. Tonight's important, I confessed, as she shaped my hair into soft, deliberate waves. I need to look untouchable. She smiled knowingly in the mirror. Honey, you already do. Now they'll see it. Even my jewelry was chosen with intent small pearl earrings, a gift from my late grandmother. She had once told me, when they underestimate, you stand taller. When they silence, you speak clearer. I carried her words with me like armor under the skin. That afternoon, I practiced once more in front of the bathroom mirror. Thank you, Linda. This is the most generous gift you've ever given me. I let the irony settle in my voice, cool and sharp. Then I rehearsed the counterstrike. I also have a gift to share, an offer from the Grand Plaza Hotel. $45,000 a year. Benefits, housing, a fresh start. The phrases tasted sweeter each time, like sugar dissolving into tea. I paused, studying my reflection. Did I look like someone who could deliver such lines without trembling? My hands shook at first, but I gripped the counter until they stilled. My eyes met themselves in the mirror, steady focused. This wasn't just about exposing Linda's cruelty. It was about reclaiming myself, my worth, my dignity, the parts of me she had spent years grinding down. I kept silent during the hours leading up to dinner. When Ethan texted to confirm our reservation at Daniel's, I typed only, "Can't wait." When Sarah sent another emoji-filled message about how memorable tonight would be, I replied with a smiley face, my lips curling at the irony. Inside, I was coiling tighter, ready to strike. Even at Daniel's before my shift, I couldn't hide my anticipation. Angela caught me humming as I tied my apron, even though I wasn't scheduled that night. "What's got into you?" she asked, sliding a pan of breadsticks into the oven. "Tonight's the night," I whispered, patting my purse. "They think they're planning my downfall. They have no idea I've already written the ending." Angela smirked, wiping her hands. "Then let them serve the appetizer, honey. You bring the main course." That evening, as I applied lipstick in the bathroom, Ethan leaned against the doorframe watching me. "You look beautiful," he said softly, almost guiltily. "Tonight will change everything?" I met his eyes in the mirror. "You're right," I replied, my tone so calm he didn't notice the double meaning. My heart pounded, not with fear, but with control. Every insult Linda had thrown at me, every holiday humiliation, every condescending remark, every time she twisted my identity into a weapon against me, was about to fold back on her. The pink envelope in her purse might hold the ending she had crafted, but my navy dress pearl earrings and folded letter in my purse were the beginning of a new story, one she couldn't touch. As we left the house, I tightened my grip on the strap of my purse. The cool paper inside brushed against my fingers, and I whispered silently to myself, "Wait for the right moment. Don't waste the reveal." The Carters thought they were bringing me to Daniel's to stage my collapse. What they didn't realize was that they had chosen my stage, my home turf, where the staff and customers knew me, respected me, valued me, the perfect audience. Would you have the patience to wait, to smile at the very people planning your humiliation, knowing the blade you carried was sharper than theirs I did? And by the end of the night, they would know it too. Daniel's restaurant smelled like roasted garlic and warm bread the night of my 31st birthday. The checkered curtains glowed gold from the setting sun, and the chatter of regulars filled the air with comfort I'd clung to for years. But as we walked in, Ethan, Sarah, Linda, and me, the air thickened. I knew this would not be comfort. This would be theater. Mr. Daniels himself hurried over, wiping his hands on his apron. "Rachel." His voice boomed like a trumpet. "And these must be your family." He shook their hands with genuine warmth, pride shining in his eyes. Linda gave a polite smile that looked painted on. Sarah barely glanced up from her phone, thumbs already twitching as if preparing for a live broadcast. We were seated in the corner booth where I'd served hundreds of meals. Tonight, I sat as the guest, the target, the spectacle. Dinner crawled by in strange civility. Linda asked me about school as though she suddenly cared. Sarah giggled mysteriously at inside jokes I wasn't meant to hear. Ethan checked his phone constantly, his smile growing tighter. The weight in my purse pressed against my thigh, my own envelope waiting patient and calm. Then came dessert. The lights dimmed slightly and the staff gathered carrying a chocolate cake with sparklers fizzing. "Happy birthday, dear Rachel," they sang. Regulars joined in, clapping along their voices, filling the room with warmth I didn't deserve but desperately needed. My heart swelled with their affection. "Make a wish." Ethan said, phone-angled red light blinking. Recording. I closed my eyes and wished for courage, then blew out the candles. Smoke curled upward like incense to the gods of second chances. Linda clapped sharply, the sound cutting through the cheer like a gavel. From her purse, she pulled the pale pink envelope with its silver butterflies. She held it high for the entire restaurant to see her smile glowing with false generosity. "We have a special gift for you, Rachel. From all of us." Gasps and whispers spread through nearby tables, everyone watching. Sarah raised her phone, already recording. Ethan leaned forward, hungry for my collapse. My fingers trembled as I accepted the envelope, but not from fear. From restraint. I slid it open carefully as though it might explode. Inside crisp legal documents, black bold letters screamed, "Petition for dissolution of marriage." The restaurant's hum quieted to a hush. Forks froze midair. The Carters leaned closer, eager for my breakdown. But I didn't give it to them. I picked up the pen they had thoughtfully provided. My signature flowed across the line with perfect steadiness. I closed the folder, slid it back into the envelope, and looked Linda dead in the eye. "Thank you," I said clearly, my voice carrying across the restaurant. "This is the most generous gift you've ever given me." Linda's triumphant smile faltered, confusion flickering. Ethan lowered his phone an inch. Sarah blinked, her recording stuttering as if her camera couldn't process what it was seeing. Then, slowly, deliberately, I reached into my purse. "And I have a gift for you, too." I pulled out my envelope, the one I'd guarded like a blade. I unfolded the letter, the Grand Plaza Hotel's crest shining under the restaurant lights. 3 days ago, I was offered a position as guest services coordinator at the Grand Plaza Hotel, I announced. $45,000 a year, full benefits, housing included, and a fresh start 3 hours from here. Gasps rippled through the dining room. Mr. Daniels clapped his hands together. "Rachel, that's wonderful news." Angela popped her head out of the kitchen window, tears brimming. "I knew you could do it," Chris actually whooped, dropping his rag. Applause swelled from customers who had watched me serve them with dignity week after week. Mrs. Green raised her glass to Rachel she toasted. Strangers joined in, clinking silverware against glasses, cheering louder and louder. The Carters sat frozen, their ambush collapsing under the weight of my announcement. Linda's face cycled from disbelief to panic, her lips parting with no words to fill them. Ethan's recording shook in his hands, capturing not my humiliation, but their downfall. Sarah's phone lowered, her smirk erased. I laid the job letter flat on the table beside the divorce papers, side by side like exhibits in a trial. "While you were planning my destruction," I said calmly, "I was planning my future. So, thank you for freeing me exactly when I needed it." The room erupted in cheers. Linda's cheeks burned crimson, her hands twitching around her silverware. Ethan looked as though he'd swallowed stones. Sarah tried to laugh, but the sound caught in her throat. I stood, straightened my navy dress, and tucked my letter back into my purse. My voice cut through the applause. I won't be needing dessert. I already got the sweetest gift tonight, freedom. With that, I walked out of Daniel's applause, following me like a marching band. The cool night air hit my face like baptism. Behind me, the Carters were left choking on the ashes of their own cruelty. They thought I'd break. Instead, I burned brighter. The applause from Daniel still rang in my ears long after I stepped into the night air. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt tall enough to touch the stars that had always seemed out of reach. Behind me, the Carters sat in a silence no toast could cover. Their carefully scripted humiliation turned into their own spectacle of failure. The fallout came quickly. Linda avoided me for weeks, which suited me just fine. But whispers spread through her country club circle faster than spilled wine. Mrs. Green, the same woman who once asked condescendingly about my background, told everyone about the night at Daniel's. Except in her version, I wasn't the girl who was dismissed. I was the woman who turned divorce papers into a victory lap. Linda could barely show her face without someone bringing it up. Ethan tried to reach out, sending texts that shifted from confusion to pleading. "We can work through this. I didn't know Mom would. Can we talk?" But every message felt like too little too late. I'd replayed his expression when I signed those papers, how eager he had been to film my collapse. That wasn't the face of a man who loved me. That was the face of someone rooting for my failure. Sarah stayed quiet online for once, her phone no longer buzzing with passive-aggressive articles about successful women. Maybe she realized she'd recorded her own family's disgrace instead of my downfall. I wondered if she watched the video back frame by frame, seeing the moment their plan unraveled, and my voice rose above their cruelty. As for me, I felt a strange mixture of triumph and emptiness. Winning against them didn't erase the scars of their constant judgment. Late at night, I still heard Linda's voice telling Ethan he deserved better. I still felt the sting of Christmas mornings where my gift was a book about self-improvement wrapped in newspaper. The victory was sweet, but it didn't erase the hunger for unconditional belonging I had wasted years chasing. The divorce itself unfolded swiftly. That video Ethan had been so eager to capture became Exhibit A in the proceedings. No lawyer could argue away the evidence of a family conspiring to humiliate me for sport. The judge called it planned emotional cruelty, and the settlement swung entirely in my favor. I walked away with my independence intact and no ties binding me to people who had treated me like an inconvenience. Linda once prayed I would disappear from their lives. She got her wish, just not the way she imagined. Still, I couldn't help but wonder as I packed boxes and prepared for my new apartment at the Grand Plaza. Hotel does revenge taste as sweet when the people you proved wrong refuse to admit they ever were. Did I really win? Or did I just step onto a different battlefield? They thought they had destroyed me, but all they really did was hand me the one weapon I needed: freedom. And freedom, I was learning, is the kind of gift that keeps unfolding long after the party ends. 2 weeks later, I stood in the marble lobby of the Grand Plaza Hotel, the nameplate on my chest reading Rachel Walsh, my maiden name reclaimed. Guests shook my hand, colleagues treated me with respect, and for the first time in years, I breathed without feeling judged. My apartment overlooked the city skyline each sunrise, a reminder that I had escaped the cage the Carters built. Linda may still whisper my name like a warning Ethan may regret pressing record, but none of that mattered anymore. I had built a new life, one where my worth wasn't measured by their approval, but by my own reflection.